Hello, my loves, and welcome back to Create Healing. If you're new here, my name is Sarah, and I'm an intuitive energy healer. I'm in Queensland, Australia, if you're wondering what my accent is. And today I wanted to have a bit of a chat about deep listening. It's something that can come up for people who quite often they're not feeling heard, but it's also a very important skill for us to learn to show other people around us that we are actually listening to them and can be present with them. So, this is a concept, I guess, that first came really to the forefront for me when I was studying art therapy a few years ago. And it was one of the subjects that we had to study because it is so important. There is an Aboriginal term for this, which I'll need to look up and share. Um, but what I wanted to come on today is to kind of just share a little bit about it, because it is such a key part to why some relationships and interpersonal interactions in workplaces can go very wrong when people aren't actually listening to the other person. We quite often can jump to our own conclusions before the person's even had a chance to finish what they're saying. So I'm just referring to notes as well. So it is a practice that does require us to fully concentrate on what the other person is saying, which I know for myself, with a bit of sort of ADHD brain, that can be a challenge because we obviously have our own sort of things running in the background and we can be thinking about, other things while somebody is speaking to us. So it very much requires practice. It's not necessarily something that you have to just be immediately good at. It also requires us to try to actually understand the point of view that the person is coming from and to respond to what they're saying for their benefit, not so much looking at it from our own, you know, thoughts or opinions, unless we're being asked for our thoughts or opinions, and actually remembering what the person is saying is really important because it helps people to feel really heard and seen. So it goes beyond just actually hearing the words. It involves active engagement and empathy with that person. And as I say, aiming to truly understand what the speaker's message is, what their emotions are, what their intentions are, with saying it. So not jumping in to try and fix things that you're not being asked to fix, is quite often one that comes up. So we're just going to run through some components of it. So I just want to break down the components of it. So we've got things like holding your full attention, giving them your full attention, empathy, looking for nonverbal cues, reflection, patience, and non-judgmental. So it's really about giving the speaker your undivided attention. So putting down the phone when you're listening to them, switching off the other thoughts that you may have been having, or asking for some time to finish what you were doing. Maybe you're on your phone doing a job and saying, hey, okay, I want to listen to you. Can I finish this job first so that I can give you my full attention? That's an okay thing to ask for. Even if there's background noises, so maybe turning off music or moving to a quieter place if you find, like, my brain gets really distracted if there's lots of other conversations around. So if I need to listen to somebody who's really needing to be heard, I need to move to a space that's a bit quieter. Go sit in a car is a really good little bubble to sit in as well. So what this does is it shows that you respect them, and allows you to actually fully engage with what's being communicated to you. Then we come to the empathy. So it's all about trying to understand the speaker's feelings and perspective. So empathy involves putting yourself in the other person's shoes and feeling what they are feeling, which for some of us, it comes quite easily. I'm a very empathic person. Some people aren't empathic to the same degree. And so they can really struggle with this of being able to actually really imagine what it's like to be in that person's shoes. But it requires you to step out of your own experience and to listen to them and ask questions, to get curious about what they're experiencing, so that you can actually they feel that you have empathy for them. So then we come to the non-verbal cues. And so paying attention to body language, facial expressions, and the tone of people's voice, because these are cues that often convey more than the words themselves and can provide deeper insight into what emotions and intentions they have with their conversation. And again, if you're somebody who struggles with reading these cues, it's okay to ask them, to say, hey, I just noticed that, you know, you're looking really slumped over. Like, are you feeling okay? Or, you know, if they're avoiding eye contact or really fidgety, um, that they may actually just need you to witness those things and to really gently and lovingly kind of get curious about them. Um, and if you do understand the cues, to just notice and maybe work in those questions that you can ask. Um, that sometimes you need to not be quite so direct, to be a little more subtle in the questions you can ask, when the timing's right. So the next one is reflection. And so what reflection does is, again, it's not about you giving your opinion right away unless you're asked for it, but it's to reflect back to them what you've heard to ensure that you're understanding. So this can involve summarizing what they've said and ask for sort of clarifying questions. So if you say, okay, so you're saying that this is the way that it unfolded and this is the way that it made you feel. Is that right? And then they can either say, yes, that's right, or they might say, oh, because sometimes when we reflect their words back to them, they can actually listen to what they've said and go, oh, hold on, that is what I said, but yeah, I actually just realized that I maybe read the situation wrong, or hold on, I'm getting upset about something that, you know, may or may not have been as big a deal. It gives them a chance to actually reflect on their own words because we're mirroring them back to them. So it's also really important to have patience with them, and taking time to allow them to fully express before you move away. One that gets me all the time is people moving away while I'm still speaking. I find I really don't feel heard at all if I'm in the middle of a conversation with somebody and they're turning and walking away. Okay, so it's also about not interrupting until they've sort of had a chance to express and they've paused. So definitely not cutting off and saying, okay, I think I know what you mean, before they've actually said what they mean, because you're not, even if you've got a sense of what they mean, some of us are quite intuitive, even if you have a sense of what they're meaning, you're not making them feel heard because they need to speak right now. They need to express it out. They need to feel safe to do so. So having patience, builds that space, that trust that you're going to let them speak, you're going to listen, um, and let the conversation really unfold fully. and naturally. So then the last one we've got here is to be non-judgmental, which I see a lot of people struggle with this one. I used to struggle in the past, and I think it's because we kind of want to put our views out there, or if we're not being fully empathic or compassionate for their situation, we're actually looking at what they're saying from our own point of view and how we would react to it. And that can quite often feel like we're judging them for not doing the same thing that we would do. So it's really important to listen without offering anything that maybe come across as judging, or forming opinions until the speaker has finished. Okay, because otherwise they're not going to share openly. You're going to cut them off and they're going to feel judged and they're just going to shut down, and then they push it down. And so, from an energy healing point of view, that's really not great because we can process a lot of emotional energy through what we share and what we speak. But if we're surrounded by people who aren't actually able to deeply listen to us, we're not feeling heard, then we continually either go to speak and then pull it back in, or we learn not to bother speaking at all. And that is a lot of emotional energy that's then not being processed, and it can cause other issues in your body. Pardon me. So, some of the benefits. Why should we be doing this? Because it could seem like a lot of hard work to do as a listener. Some people aren't natural listeners, but what it does is it actually improves the relationship, and you can use your discretion who you're going to choose to deeply listen to. Someone, the clerk at the grocery store, you don't have to deeply listen to that person while they're packing your groceries. You might want to consider this for husbands and wives, children at a very minimum, um, other family members that you want that relationship to be healthy. So it fosters a trust between you and it strengthens that relationship by showing that you actually care about the speaker's thoughts and feelings. Okay. So that's number one. It also enhances your understanding of them. So if you're fully engaging with the speaker, you gain a better understanding of their perspective and their experience in the world. And then you can actually respond more thoughtfully because it's like you're collecting data from them to actually understand. And part of that may be understanding that you actually don't have to do anything except listen. That maybe they're not asking you to fix their problems. Maybe they literally just need you to hold that space for them. There doesn't have to be a responsibility or an action plan. It doesn't have to be a huge, heavy burden for you if you can recognize that maybe what they just need is just to listen. So, doing this also helps to reduce conflict because if you're interrupting somebody, you're misunderstanding them, they're misunderstanding you, and then it can erupt. And a lot of conversations can do this, and people become fearful of confronting things because they don't feel like they can have a safe conversation that can just go backwards and forwards and actually have a healthy and natural flow to it. So it also promotes personal growth for the person you're listening to, but you will also find you can recognize if you're sitting in that space of listening without judgment, you are going to feel things. So you can actually have a lot of personal growth through listening to other people and paying attention to how it's making you feel, but remembering that that's your experience. So, what can quite often happen, and I have this happen with clients sometimes, is that their story will actually evoke in me a memory of something that's similar. Um, Even just compassion can really hit us hard. And that's an opportunity for us to feel what we need to feel, to maybe find a time and a place where we need to express the thing that we've just realized that, oh, hold on, That similar situation happened to me. It's probably not the circumstances to put that into that conversation. Otherwise, it gets a bit comparison. The art of sharing your stories can be helpful. But if it's a big trigger for you, you don't want to derail their story by going off on a tangent about your own trauma or your own experience that was similar. Save it, reflect on it yourself, and find somebody later on that you can talk to about it, or maybe when they're done fully expressing it and they're okay, then you might be able to say, yeah, look, while you were talking, I really actually realized that, I had a similar experience to this, many years ago. Um, and so you can both grow together. And that's a really beautiful part of it too. And that's improving your communication skills, improving your patience and your empathy. And that applies through your whole life, can help you. So, what it's also doing, again, for you and for them, is it's helping to boost your emotional intelligence. So, it's enhancing your ability to actually recognize and understand the emotions in yourself and in others. And that those emotions don't have to be shied away from, they don't have to be scary, that you can actually, if you're providing a safe space for somebody else to express their emotions in, you are entitled to have that same space for you to be able to share that. And it might highlight to you where you do feel safe and where you don't feel safe and who you can go to. Because as we said, not everybody's cut out for being the person who can do the deep listening. So a few ways. So we're going to go through a few ways that you can practice deep listening. Okay. So whether you want to grab a pen and paper and write these down, or just to practice listening to what I'm saying, even close your eyes and just really listen to my voice. So it's really about being present with that person and what they're saying, again, what their body's doing. Focus entirely on the speaker and maintain eye contact. And some people get weirded out by looking directly in people's eyes the whole time. But even if you just make sure that you're looking sort of at their body, that person will still feel that you are seeing them. Even watching hand gestures, and those kind of movements. And that really does, that flows into the next one, which is show that you're listening, which is the nods and the facial expressions and the, okay, yeah. And that is a way that you can practice that without speaking. You don't even have to make a sound to go, oh, yeah. You might have a really quiet thing, but if you're looking at them and they're looking at you, all you need to do is look and shift and acknowledge what they're saying by using your facial expressions and your nods. And as we said before, avoid interrupting. Let the speaker finish their thoughts before you respond. It shows respect and allows for you to completely understand their message. You can ask open-ended questions to encourage them to elaborate on the questions if they require more than a yes or a no. And you can do this with things like, can you tell me more about how that made you feel? Or can you tell me more about, what was said? To get them to sort of really weigh up, sometimes it's even that they need to consider the perspective of the other person that was involved in the interaction, because maybe they were just looking at it from their point of view and that's what's created their frustration thing that they need to talk about. So if you can practice paraphrasing in that reflecting sort of portion of it, and that's to repeat back what they said, but you can say it in your own words. And you can even say, can I just check, am I understanding this right? So are you saying that da 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 da, this is what happened? And you may not say their words exactly. You can put it in your own words. And this is really beautiful because sometimes they'll be like, no, that's not what I meant. But in doing that, it helps them to actually identify what they did mean. And that can be really helpful for them in their reflection because then they have to consider, oh, well, that's what I said, but you took it the wrong way. And it's not so much that you messed up, but maybe it's in what they communicated and to say, look, no, I'm curious. I'm wanting to understand more. And you can pull it back in that way. So managing your own responses is, as we've said, really quite important to recognize whether or not you're actually being triggered by the conversation. If it's directly about you, that can be really challenging. And you can ask to remove yourself for a minute and say, look, I can feel that, you know, you're bringing up some really confronting stuff. I'm going to actually need some time to process this before I respond because I don't want to say anything that's going to upset the situation. Um, can I have some time to think about it and I'll come back to you, you know, maybe set a time. I need 24 hours to digest this. Okay. Or it might just be just to sit and notice what's happening in your body, whether you're getting some heart rate increase or feeling a little flushed or embarrassed or whatever, and to ask yourself while you're listening, is this mine or is it theirs? Okay. And is it really necessary for me to say something about what I'm experiencing now, or can I just feel it and listen? Okay. So I think we've covered most of the things that I wanted to talk about in this, and I would really love to hear any of your thoughts and experiences about this, how it affects your life, whether you um, feel like you are a good listener, whether it's something you could work on, whether you are aware of people in your circles who are the really good listeners that you go to, whether there's people in your circles who you wish could do it better because they're the person you really want to talk about. Um, but yeah, I've just looked up quickly too while I was chatting. So the Aboriginal word for this is Dadiri. And so deep listening, the Aboriginal people is a practice that's almost like a spiritual skill. It's based on respect. And it's their sort of interpretation of their word is that it's inner deep listening and quiet, still awareness and waiting. So let that sit with you, my loves. And yeah, I hope that this has been helpful. And I would love to hear your thoughts, comments, any input that you have. Much love.